Coming up on New England Hockey Journal, it's our annual look at the top New England prospects eligible for the NHL Entry Draft coming this summer. We will get insight from New England Hockey Journal's Kirk Luedeke and Jeff Cox and count down the top 15 players from the region looking to start their pro careers.
On behalf of our passionate fans, I'm proud to make a historical first ever amateur draft selection for our team by choosing from the University of Michigan, Matthew Beniers.
Hingham, Mass. native Matt Beniers made history a year ago when he was the first ever draft pick of the expansion Seattle Kraken. So how does this year's crop of prospects compare to last year's?
There's no Jack Eichel, there's no Noah Hannafin, but there's quite a bit of good hockey players out there. You can go about 20 deep in terms of players that have some sort of skill set that makes NHL teams intrigued.
I think last year, after you got past Matty Beniers, there was a drop-off. There was a period of time in the draft where several rounds went by and there weren't as many New England players being taken, and then there was a little run at the end. I think you're going to see a steady trickle of New England talent coming off the board.
Let's get right to our top 15 countdown of New England prospects eligible for the 2022 NHL Draft. At number 15, we have Phil Tresca, a center from Newton, Massachusetts.
In his second year in the USHL, he's taken off. His lower body strength has improved, which has helped his skating become more dynamic. He's had a terrific season for Muskegon. He recently decommitted from Yale and committed to Harvard.
He's that guy when you speak about the importance of getting junior hockey to make them better, to develop their all-around game. He can come in and go to Harvard and turn the wheel and make an impact right away.
At number 14, he's a forward from Riverside, Connecticut, Hank Cleves, who's committed to Dartmouth.
Hank Cleves is probably my most improved player this year. He's got a great shot, and I think when NHL teams are looking for that big forward that can do a lot of different things, Cleves fits that profile, and I think Dartmouth committing him was a great get for the Big Green.
2 or 3 years ago, he wasn't on anyone's radar. He grew, he became more explosive. He really started to take off at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall with the Mid-Fairfield Rangers, and he's carried that over to Brunswick. He's going to have to prove that he can be a true power forward, but I believe he'll be a player that NHL teams are looking at and potentially will spend a flyer on late in the draft just based on his size and the upward trajectory of his development.
Our number 13 New England prospect is Grayson Badger out of Hyde Park, Mass. He's heading to Northeastern to play for the Huskies.
With Grayson Badger, it's the whole package of energy. He's relentless around the puck a lot, and he works so hard. He's physical. He creates space for himself and his line mates. He gets to the net. He's a tremendous athlete, so he's going to get better. And I think with NHL teams, they might look at him now and say, well, maybe his stride is a little awkward at times, or maybe he's a little bit raw, but a smart team will say he's so athletic that if we get the right people to work with him and coach him, he could really be something.
Yeah, Grayson's a player that I've liked for quite a few years. He's had his ups and downs this year. His production's been good, not great, but he's a player that just works hard, and I think he'll be even better once he gets into the USHL and once he gets to college at Northeastern.
At number 12, Brady Berard from East Greenwich, Rhode Island. He will be joining his brother at Providence.
He's just one of those kids, and his brother's the same way, that just make the most out of their ability. To me, he's one of those players that's challenged himself with going to the national team. If he was in the prep school circuit or Mount St. Charles, where he spent his U15 year, he'd be putting up huge numbers, and there'd be less debate over whether he should be drafted.
I think if you asked Brady himself, he would tell you that he probably wishes he had a bigger, more offensive role at the national team. But the thing about being in Plymouth, Michigan, in the program, these are the top players in their birth year. And so he's a lower line guy. He's someone that they depend on to grind it out, force turnovers, disrupt, transition play the other way, things like that. And so NHL teams that are looking at him are not sure how his skill is going to translate into production at the next level. But again, we're talking about a player that comes with from a fine pedigree. His older brother is a top scorer in the Hockey East right now. There's a lot to be said about that, and at the right spot in the draft, a kid like Brady Berard could pay some nice dividends.
When we come back, we will continue our top 15 countdown of New England prospects who will be headed to the NHL Entry Draft.
Got to Serpone. Score! Buenas Blue Jays!
New England Hockey Journal's Rinkwise, hosted by Kirk Luedecke, is the hockey podcast for serious hockey players and their supporters to help guide them throughout their hockey careers with interviews and insight from some of the biggest names in the game. Download Rinkwise today wherever you get your podcasts or listen at hockeyjournal.com/podcast. You're looking at Milton Academy's Chris Romaine playing in last December's Flood Mar tournament. He is our number 11 New England prospect who will be eligible for this year's NHL entry draft.
Two things with Romaine. He's always been a fabulous skater, and his mobility was something that jumps out at you right away. Chris Romaine is a great skater who can move well in 4 different directions and gets back in retrievals quickly. And then when he gets the puck on his stick, he can elude forechecking pressure with his feet. He can move it quickly. The other thing, though, I think the most intriguing thing about what has put him in the fast lane for draft consideration is he grew. He was a smaller, slight frame, shorter, and the pro teams tend to be a little leery of those small guys, especially at the defense position. Well, now he's over 6 feet, and he's added mass to his frame, and now I think that whole size concern isn't as big an issue.
Romaine's an interesting player. I've seen him for a while. He started out at BC High. He's now at Milton. He's a really good skater, big kid, strong, can play physically, has a pretty good shot, but the one knock on him right now is his offensive production and the lack of offensive production. But he's great on the breakouts, has a really good first touch, and he's a player that I think is someone that's going to keep getting better.
At number 10 is Andon Serbone, a center from Stamford, Connecticut, who's currently playing in the USHL for the Chicago Steel.
Serbone's a player that came up through Mid-Fairfield and Brunswick School, and really skilled offensive player, good coming off the wall, great on the power play. He's a smaller guy, needs to put on some weight and become more dynamic, but he's a player that if he had stayed at Brunswick or stayed at Mid-Fairfield, he would be putting up huge numbers. I think he had 40 points a couple years ago at Brunswick. He's a player that NHL teams probably aren't going to draft, but to me, he's a player that should be valued a little bit higher than he is, just based on the fact that he is challenging himself. He's on a deep Chicago team, but when he gets time and space, he's a dangerous hockey player.
He is a highly talented, highly skilled, cerebral hockey player. He doesn't have ideal size, and that's probably why I think if he was a little bigger, a little stronger, he'd be higher on this list. He came out of Brunswick and left prep hockey a year ago because there was no season to go out and play for the Chicago Steel that ended up winning championship. Now, he didn't have much of a role with the Steel's championship team, but just getting that experience, I think, had helped him immensely, and now he's one of the regulars on the Steel roster this year. And again, it gets back to having the ability to go out and play games, develop, and play at a high level.
Our number 9 prospect is from South Boston, Michael Callow, a forward committed to Harvard.
Michael Callow is the kind of player you see right away. If you haven't seen him before, you notice him immediately because he's so big. He's an effortless skater, has an unbelievable shot, can score. He's a threat to score on every shift. And so for those that aren't familiar with him, usually, and certainly in my case, the very first time I saw him, I knew who he was right away. I think he's a goal per game guy. He's had multiple hat tricks this season. And the thing with him is consistency. If he was consistently driving plays on every shift and in every game, I think he'd have a lot more goals, and I think he'd be higher on the list.
You see a 6'2", 6'3", big power forward, right wing like him, and you want him to dominate every shift because that's really what it takes to be a high-level NHL draft pick. And there's shifts where he looks like an NHL hockey player, but then there's shifts where you just kind of want to see more, and that's kind of the knock on him with NHL scouts, is that he's great some shifts and needs to bring that at least 80-90% of the time instead of maybe 50 where it is now. But you see his shot is electric. He's got a rocket of a shot. I've seen him score some really just great goals coming down the right wing or driving the net. He's a player with a lot of potential if he can put it together.
Number 8 is Michael Fisher, a defenseman out of Westboro, Mass.
Michael Fisher's a player that a lot of NHL scouts really like, and I really like as well. He's a big righty, skates really well, has produced a ton with Carl Corzini's St. Mark's team this year, taking a bigger role. He'll be in the USHL next year before going on to college, and whenever you see a guy his size and his skating ability, you obviously are very intrigued. He has to work on a few things, like, making better decisions all the time and finding those open areas where sometimes he'll end up in dead areas. But, that's just nitpicking for as far as NHL potential goes. But you talk to NHL scouts around the area, and he's a player that I think has really impressed them this year.
Michael Fisher is the highest scoring defenseman in prep hockey. He's another one that just came a long, long way this season. He always had the size and the mobility, but coming into the season, it looked like he was going to be more of a defensive defenseman, and you just were hoping that he would be able to chip in offensively. And then, as it turns out, under Carl Corazzini, he played a ton, 2 points a game as a defenseman, which is tremendous. And he has the look and feel of a future pro.
Stay with us as we count down our top 15 New England prospects. We'll be right back after this short timeout.
Now it's Gaucher to Letty. High slot, took a shot, he scored.
We are counting down our top New England prospects eligible for this summer's NHL Entry Draft. And at number 7 is defenseman Charlie Letty from Fairfield, Connecticut, currently in the National Development Program and committed to Boston College.
Charlie Letty is one of those players that when you look at Letty, he just has the size, he has the skating, he can handle pucks, he can defend. He just looks the part of a future pro, and it's not hard to understand why he's a Boston College recruit, because he just has that look about him. Kind of similar to Brady Berard, his role at the national team, he hasn't been a top pairing, do everything, play a lot of power play. He hasn't been put in the positions to really be that prime top 2 to 3 guy on that team, but he's done well with the opportunities he's been given. The key to him being successful with the next and subsequent levels is he's got to end more plays along the walls. He's got to be a little tougher to play against and be a little more judicious in terms of when he employs his stick versus takes his body.
Letty just does a good job of playing his position, being that shutdown physical defenseman that can be relied upon in all situations. And he's an athletic kid, physical, maybe not the most dynamic physical tools, but he's a player to me that's proven that he can compete against the best of the best with the national team, and he's a player that for sure should get drafted.
At number 6, our second Fisher in our countdown, this is James Fisher from Wilmington, Massachusetts.
Fisher's an interesting player. He's somewhat of a late bloomer. Played up in his U14 year with the Junior Bruins, and then kind of struggled to find his identity at Belmont Hill his freshman year. Really took off last year, earned that commitment to Northeastern. He's a power forward that'll shoot it from anywhere. That's what I really like about Fisher. He plays hard, he plays north-south, he brings it physically, he can shoot it hard, and he can take games over. I truly believe that once he continues developing and plays it with a little bit more structure, his game's going to continue to take off.
James Fisher is a power forward who can really skate and just has a bomb of a shot. He's used that to good effect this year at Belmont Hill. He can be so physical in terms of he finishes hits, he goes hard to the net. He really is a handful to contain for defenders, because he can beat them wide with speed, or he can go right to the net and push them back. He can establish position outside the paint, and he's a good athlete. He's got great hand-eye coordination, so he's able to high tips. He's able to one-time pucks. He has a natural knack for scoring.
Number 5 is center Ben McDonald out of Weston, Mass. He just finished the season playing at Nobles and is committed to Harvard.
The apple didn't fall far from the tree with Ben McDonald. His dad was Lane McDonald, who played at Harvard and won a Hobey Baker and a national championship for the Crimson. So he comes from a great stock, great pedigree. Ben McDonald has always been a cerebral center that can create and thinks the game and sees the ice very well. But I think what's really come on for him in the last year or so, and has been so key to him rising and putting himself in position to be one of the top draft picks out of New England this year, is his improvement in his skill, his skating, like his all-around ability. He's grown. Now he's a complete package. He plays a ton in all situations because he's reliable and he does everything well.
McDonald's a player that's really improved over the last couple of years. I've always liked his game. He's smart. He plays a 200-foot game, but he's really become more dynamic, and he's one of those players that I think used the time during COVID when there weren't as many games to get stronger, to get more effective down low. His lower body strength has taken off. His skating's become better, and to me, if I'm thinking of drafting a player, I want to see a player with an upward trajectory and becoming better, and I think that is McDonald. I think he has the skill. He could become more of a dynamic puck possession guy who has the puck more, but he's a player that I really like, and to me, it's him or James Fisher in terms of who will be the first kid taken in the NHL draft this year out of prep.
Our number 4 prospect is also committed to Harvard, defenseman Ryan Healy out of Hull, Massachusetts.
Healy's one of those players that's just so gifted skating-wise, really great skater. He's been on a team that's struggled a little bit in the USHL Western Conference this year, but going forward, he's very effective. He can promote puck possession, break pucks out of his own zone, enter the attacking zone with ease. He's an offensive puck mover that's going to be valued in the NHL draft.
Ryan Healy came out of the Boston Advantage program. His dad, Eric Healy, played a few games for the Bruins and was a longtime minor pro. The thing that stands out about him, his greatest carry tool by far, is his skating. I mean, he's just a beautiful skater. He has an effortless, flawless stride, powerful, gets up the ice. He's able to elude forecheckers. He's able to beat opponents to loose pucks. All the things that you want in a defenseman in terms of his mobility, Healy has that.
When we come back, we'll take a look at our top 3 New England prospects eligible for the 2022 NHL Draft. Stay with us.
Now cutting around everybody, in and firing and scoring, Jackson Dorrington!
We are nearing the end of our top 15 New England prospects who will be eligible for this summer's NHL entry draft. At number 3 is defenseman Jackson Dorrington from North Reading, Mass., currently playing in the USHL.
Yeah, Dorrington's a player that I've seen a lot of for a long time. He played at Cushing as a youngster. He actually played 18U hockey that year in the fall. Just a big-time physical defenseman that can play both ways. He's a good skater, good stick. I think his shot can get a little bit better over time, but he's a player that really impressed me at the Select 17 camp in the summer with his physical play, and he's had a good year in the USHL on a team in the Western Conference that Western Conference plays a physical brand of hockey, and he's showed that he can compete and defend and also produce some offensively out there. There is a lot of upside with Dorrington, and I think as he gets bigger and stronger, he'll continue to become an even better pro prospect.
He's a physical package. He's got good size, he's strong, good skater, good defender. I think the number one thing with Dorrington's game and what he'll be able to do when he ends up at Northeastern is that he's fence first. He's a smart, keep it simple, doesn't get out of himself kind of guy.
At number 2, yet another Northeastern commit, Cam Lund, the center from Bridgewater, Mass.
Both Lund and Dorrington came out of Cushing Academy, and that would have been an excellent place for them to be a year ago, but with no prep season, they did the best they could and played some junior hockey, and I think it really helped Lund. He is a power center with great size, can really move, can shoot the puck, can handle the puck, and I think going into his USHL season, consistency was the big thing for him. He had a bit of a sluggish start, and I think it was adjusting to being a full-time player, and we have to remember, first time away from home, there are other factors that go into it. But by November, he really started to take off.
He's a high-skill player. NHL scouts love him and his potential. They want to see more consistency out of him, but he has the length, he has the skating ability, the skill, and has that jam once in a while, needs to show that jam even more, I think, but he's a player that's a potential first-line center for Northeastern and potentially a top 6 center in the NHL someday.
And finally, our number 1 prospect from the New England area finishing his freshman season at Northeastern. He is Jack Hughes from Westwood, Massachusetts.
Hughes is obviously skilled, sees the ice really well. His numbers aren't as good as a lot of the other players on this list, but that's because he's a 17, 18-year-old playing against 24, 25-year-olds in Hockey East this year. And he's on a really good team at Northeastern. There's players like Sam Colangelo and Gunnar Fontaine and Justin Ertzkowian that are maybe getting a little bit more ice time than him in power play and other key situations. But the one thing I've really been impressed with Hughes this year is everyone knew his offensive ability, knew his offensive instincts, but he's shown a little bit of a heavierness to his game than I expected him to have. And to me, he hasn't backed down in some of the games I've been at. I just think his skill set and offensive hockey sense can't really teach that. And to me, he has that kind of quick twitch to his game that should translate well, and I think he has the potential to play in the NHL someday.
Jack Hughes has always had the ability to be a top performing, creative, playmaking center forward. So now, given the extra year, he's playing college hockey, which from an NHL standpoint is appealing. He's been given a role to be able to develop, and I give credit to Jerry Keefe for sticking with that. I think NHL teams that see that are going to say, you know what, it's not about what Jack Hughes is right now as a young 18-year-old. It's about what he's going to be when he's 21, 22, 23. And that's why I think he's absolutely the best prospect coming out of New England this year for the 2022 draft.
That concludes our Top 15 New England Prospects Countdown. We will see you next time on New England Hockey Journal.